Hello guys and welcome to episode 75 of the Beat Your Backlog Podcast, a podcast discussing the things gamers like to put off, get to another day, and oh yes, will definitely beat later, their backlog. I'm your host Adam and today we are playing my first ever Kirby game, Kirby and the Forgotten Land. And the game was released on the original Nintendo Switch on the 25th of March in 2022 and at the time was lauded as a fantastic return of Kirby to the 3D platforming genre. The Nintendo Switch 2 version, the one that I'm reviewing, was released on the 27th of August 2025 and it ended up boosting the game's resolutions, its frame rate, and also added a new expansion called the Starcross World. And it wasn't really until the release of the Nintendo Switch that I became a Nintendo fan. I'd always had Nintendo consoles but never really played that many Nintendo games. And sure, one of my favourite IPs is Pokemon, which is of course is a Nintendo franchise, but it's not one of the core Nintendo developed series the company has been famous for since the 1980s. My first Zelda, Mario and Metroid games were all on the Switch, but one of the other massive series I never got around to playing was always Kirby. And it's strange because I have actually owned Kirby's Epic Yarn for the Wii for a number of years, but never felt like it was the right time to play it, and never really felt like the bunch of Kirby games that were released on the Nintendo Switch seemed interesting enough for me to actually want to dive into them. And this actually changed with the announcement of the Nintendo Switch 2 and the news that Kirby and the Forgotten Land would be getting a Nintendo Switch 2 version that would boost its resolution and performance and adding new content. And because the launch lineup of the Nintendo Switch 2 has been pretty light, and I just finished Donkey Kong Bonanza and was like, okay, I want more of this kind of 3D platforming fix, I decided to pick up a copy of Kirby and the Forgotten Land, a physical version, quite cheaply on the Nintendo Switch, and then paid for the expansion, the Boost Pass, which was €19.99. So what is Kirby and the Forgotten Land Nintendo Switch 2 edition plus the Starcross World, apart from it being probably the longest video game name ever? And should you pay €19.99 for the booster pack? And has it actually converted me into a Kirby fan? Let's find out in this week's episode of the Beat Your Backlog Podcast. But as always, before we get into the episode, I would like to remind you that you can support the podcast on Patreon. If you do, you will gain access to all of my content 24 hours early, and you will unlock the Patreon exclusive Beat Your Bonus Vault, which is filled up with exclusive podcasts just for patrons. This month's episode I haven't recorded yet, but I think I'm just going to review the Nintendo Switch Direct, which recently came out. I know it's not timely, but that's what I like about doing these exclusive episodes, is that I don't need to be timely about them. I can put them out as like, here is my exclusive thoughts, because I don't really talk about them elsewhere. So if you're interested in that, please do go over to patreon.com/beatyourbacklog or click the link in the description and consider supporting there. And as always, thank you to all of my Patreon supporters. Now on with the show. And as always, we start with the story. And this story starts very quickly with Kirby and his Waddle Dee friends chilling out on planet Popstar. And just then a strange star-shaped portal opens up above the planet and starts pulling everything, including Kirby and all of the Waddle Dees, into it. Kirby awakens in a strange new world that interestingly looks like a dystopian version of our own. And I think it's very fair to say that this game's world looks like it's been inspired by the sort of PlayStation/Sony brand of dystopian world of like derelict concrete glass buildings intertwined with these lush green vines and shrubbery and plant life, very sort of The Last of Us and Horizon Zero Dawn. And it's in this Forgotten Land, wink wink, you see what I did there, where Kirby meets Elephant, a blue mouse-like creature with large ears that are big enough to let it fly, Dumbo style. And Elephant informs Kirby that the only way to return to Planet Popstar is to round up the Waddle Dees that have been sucked through the portal by rescuing them from the Beast Pack, which is a group of various aggressive monsters headed by giant bosses that have some very cool designs, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Doing so slowly rebuilds a town run by the Waddle Dee that acts as the game's main hub, where you can upgrade Kirby's copy abilities, buy items, and even go fishing. As Kirby and Elephant beat their way through the Beast Pack's bosses, the plot thickens, revealing that the Beast Pack has been left behind on this world when its seemingly human occupants all left. The pack's leader, Leonga, explains that the only thing that can save the monsters and take them to the land of dreams is combining Elephant with a lab-created creature called IDF-86, which reminds me a lot of Mewtwo because it's there kind of floating in its tank and it seems to have some kind of like psychological powers, which is pretty cool. So yeah, if you've seen the first Pokemon movie, you'll know what I mean. And yeah, the story is quite a bit more involved in the game than I was expecting from a Kirby game, but it is still very much a Nintendo story. Characters get thrown into some sort of world-ending event, a sort of quirky sidekick is introduced, and you two have to save the world together. And by going through levels with bosses at the end, it's very Nintendo, but it is sort of shown in a very epic sort of setting, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And also some of the themes that are in it are quite interesting, like what had happened to the humans, why has this world gone derelict, why is IDF 86 created, and what other worlds possibly are there in this Kirby universe. I would argue that the first two of those things there isn't really an answer, to be fair, but it is kind of interesting nonetheless as to making you as a player think like, what on earth is actually going on in this world. And and it's another thing that I've taken away from this and taken away from a few Nintendo games recently is that I think it's very interesting that Nintendo seems to be on this trend of putting their cartoony characters into realistic like looking worlds. So obviously with this game it's the case, with Super Mario Odyssey was the case as well, where he went to this very human real world looking city, what was it called, New Donk City. And they've done it in some other games. I know there was like one of the Paper Mario games on Wii U where some of the secret weapons or the weapons that you use were just realistic looking items. So I think it's an interesting take that they keep doing this, and I think it's also interesting that even though you wouldn't think that the two sort of art styles of cartoon and realism, you wouldn't think they would go together, but they actually do. Like, it never seemed weird that this pink sphere with cartoony eyes and a cartoony mouth was running around in a realistic human world. And I think the presentation of the story is also done very well here. The cutscenes in the game are gorgeous, especially now that they've been up-resed and that they run at a higher frame rate, of course. And the cutscenes are very much on par with those of Donkey Kong Bonanza and Super Mario RPG, which I think are two of the best looking Nintendo games ever made. Though, speaking of Donkey Kong Bonanza, which is of course a 3D platforming collectathon game, like I said, I actually finished the game just before starting Kirby, which I think might have been to Kirby's detriment, unfortunately. So exploring and hunting for the Bonandium gems, which if you haven't played the game are basically the things that you are looking for in the game and collecting. It's one of like the best moment to moment gameplay loops I've ever played, and one of the most fun. And I just enjoyed every minute of it. If you haven't listened to my review, I suggest you go back and listen to it. But I talk about like how it became like addictive, and like as I wasn't playing the game, I was thinking about playing the game because I thought the moment to moment was so fun to play. Going off of that and coming into Kirby, it does make Kirby feel a little bit antiquated, I would say, because it's very much more along the traditional lines of level based 3D platforming, which was actually to my surprise, because for some reason I thought one of the reasons why people like this game so much was because it was an open world game. Turns out it is an open world and probably had never ever been advertised as an open world, but for some reason I always thought it was. But no, instead, like I said, it's a bit more along the traditional lines where it's broken up into 7 different worlds, each of which has about 4 to 5 main levels in them. And of course, each world has a theme. So the first one is called Natural Plains. This is the one that I talked about, which is it's like derelict city being overtaken by greenery. And the other ones also kind of in a very Nintendo way as well. They have very standard themes. So one is desert, one is volcano, one is snow. But there is a twist to them with this derelict world. So like the desert world, for example, it gives hints that the desert was once an ocean, because strewn around the desert are these huge cargo container ships. So it kind of makes you think, maybe because of global warming. Like that kind of also adds to the story building. Like, it isn't necessarily given to you, but you see things like this and you think, there used to be an ocean here. For whatever reason, there isn't now. There's a desert. Maybe there was something wrong with the environment, and that's why all these ships are in the middle of the desert, which is cool. Like I said, it's very like you can probably guess all 5 if you thought about it like for 2 minutes. So like, all right, what are the standard platforming themes you would get in a 3D platformer? But there is this twist to them, which is very cool, and again, very kind of Nintendo. And within each level, there are sort of 5 different challenges to do. So So it's not just get to the end of the level a la Mario, where you want to just get through the level without dying. But what you want to do in the levels is find as many Waddle Dees as possible. Because if you find more and more Waddle Dees, you get more and more buildings built in your town. And it also unlocks the boss door at the end of the level. So you need a certain amount per world to unlock the boss to be able to fight the boss. And like I said, in each level, there is 5 challenges. One of them is get to the end. That always awards you 3 Waddle Dees. And challenge 2 is always to find hidden Waddle Dees throughout the level. So depending on the level, there'll be 3 to 5 Waddle Dees that you'll have to find. And then the challenges from like 3 to 5 are always a mystery. So it doesn't, when you enter the level, you actually don't know what they are. Which is kind of cool because it means you have to experiment in the level to find out what the challenges are. So and almost like explore. So some of them, or most of them, fall along the line of find some sort of collectible in the level. Maybe 4 of them or 5 of them, or some of them are also like, there are posters, like wanted posters for Kirby up, and it's knocking those down or ripping those down, and again it's like find 3 or 5. Some might be like in a snow level, there might be snowmen or snow animals that you have to break. Again, you find multiple of them throughout the level and have to find them all. And then there are some more like one-off ones where there was a couple in the beach world where you're in the water a lot, and there's like a golden fish swimming around and you have to find the golden fish. So they're quite simple. It basically comes down to a lot of exploration of like making sure that you look around the level and don't just kind of make a beeline to the end. And again, comparing this method of finding collectible to Bonanza does make the game feel quite quaint. And at the start, the sort of OCD side of me got a little bit into a panic because I thought, oh god, I'm gonna have to like comb every single level, every like pixel in the level to find these Waddle Dees. However, quite nicely, it turned out that the challenges were quite streamlined because of the linearity of the levels. So I first entered the first level I entered, the first thing I did was, again, sort of very Nintendo style, was run the opposite direction the camera was facing me in. And I realized that behind me was an invisible wall, and the camera is a fixed camera, so you can't rotate the camera yourself. So once I realized that, I was like, okay, well, this isn't it isn't Donkey Kong. It isn't, you have to really like comb every surface to see if there is a Bonandium gem or a fossil there. It's much more streamlined. It's much more simplified. It's much more kid-focused, which we'll talk about a bit more later. So my kind of panic eased a little bit because I thought, okay, it shouldn't be that hard to find all of these Waddle Dees. And I knew it wasn't that kind of collect-a-thon game. And so it definitely wasn't a pixel combing either. Like the Waddle Dees usually took maybe 2 runs to get through the level, and the second one was usually quick because you could just skip everything. Most of the Waddle Dees you would have found already, so you didn't have to skip. You didn't have to go looking for them. You could just go to more or less where you needed to go to find the hidden challenge. It was cool because after you first beat the level, if you don't do all of the challenges, it will reveal one of them. So it will say like, oh, get to the clock tower, and you're like, okay, so I remember seeing the clock tower in the level. Somehow I must be able to get there. And then you realize, okay, if you use Kirby's float, you can float yourself there, things like that. So it just made it way more streamlined to be like, I know where I need to go in the net if I do another run, and I should be able to find the Waddle Dee there, which was really, really nice because it really felt like you weren't wasting time. And I think that shows in my gameplay because I found every single Waddle Dee in all of the first 7 worlds. In the last world, I didn't find them all in the level. And the reason for that was by that time I'd seen what the Waddle Dees more or less got you in the game, and I was like, okay, I don't necessarily feel like I need to go through the level again a second time to find them all, because I'd upgraded my town all the way, and the boss door I knew I would already have enough to unlock it. So I was like, okay, I don't need to find them all. And also in the bosses, there was always one challenge, which was beat the boss without getting hit, which I found a little bit annoying. So I was like, okay, I'm not going to do that challenge to get that Waddle Dee. So that was also one that I consistently missed. But it was very nice. Like it was something, I can't remember if I put this in my notes for later on, but it was something that I thought was very unusual and unexpected. Was when you collect the Waddle Dees, there is this sort of animation where you go over to the overworld, and it shows you the level, and then there's like a summary of all the Waddle Dees flying over to a star, and it shows you how many Waddle Dees out of 10 or 12 or whatever it is you collected. And I was like, wow, this animation feels exactly the same as that same animation in Astro Bot. So Astro Bot did the same. Like, you come out onto the planets, and then there is the PlayStation controller, and all of the bots fly over, and then they fly off. And I was like, wow, it must be that like Astro Bot must have been inspired by this, which I thought was quite cool. And then also the same when you unlock the boss door. So you get to the end of the level, and it says, oh, you need 25 Waddle Dees to unlock it, and then all of the Waddle Dees just puff and appear, and then they all attack the door. And I was like, oh yeah, that's also exactly the same as in Astro Bot, where you get to, what is it? Is it when you rebuild the PlayStation, or also like the boss level? I can't remember, but there is also an animation like that where all of them appear and then they all go off and attack something. And I was like, wow, it's strange to see like that Astro Bot was inspired by this and that they kind of copied it like almost exactly, which was a little bit jarring when I saw it. And I was like, oh, okay, cool, I guess. It's what's it called, like there's that saying about like, what's it called, where you kind of copy someone and that's like the biggest form of flattery. I can't remember what the saying is, but you know what I mean. But yeah, so that was one thing that stood out to me. And talking of copying, if you played a Kirby game before, you'll know that Kirby's main ability is that he can swallow enemies and then he copies their ability. And it's interesting because I've now lost my thing in the notes. Okay, actually I've jumped forward a little bit, so bear with me. So as well as it kind of leads on to that. Sorry, I've lost my train of thought now because I was trying to think of what this saying was about the best form of flattery, but I can't remember what it was. But anyway, so if you've played a Kirby level, you'll basically know what it is. It's you are inhaling these enemies to copy their abilities, and you are doing basic platforming of jumping and then like holding down A or tapping A to kind of float your way through the level. But what the Forgotten Lands adds is this new mouthful mechanic, which is very, very cool. And again, it's this Nintendo's strange obsession of having its characters interact with real life objects persist in this mechanic, because it sees Kirby opening his mouth almost like an anaconda, so as big as it can go, and stuffing it full of unusual, realistic objects like a car, a vending machine, a staircase, and lots of other things. And these mouthful sections of the levels are really a highlight in this game for me. Yes, the overall level design in the game is good, but I always thought Kirby's platforming mechanics are so basic and so simple, and I know that's on purpose. I know this is more aimed towards kids, but it just everything started to feel a little bit the same for me. Whereas the mouthful mechanic adds a shot in the arm to the level design, and it really reminds me of the Wonder Flowers or the Wonder Flower sections from Super Mario Bros. Wonder, where you had this little highlight in each level, where in that game you really didn't know what you were going to get. In this one, it's not as wonderful, or there's not as much wonder because there are only so many mouthful mechanics or mouthful items. But whenever I got it, I was always pleased because I was like, oh, these feel great. And that's especially so in the challenge levels of the game. So in each world, there are challenge levels where you have to basically race against the clock to get to the end of the level. And there are some that use the copy abilities, and there are some that are just mouthful ones. And the mouthful ones feel great. Like they really let those items shine on their own, because in the game you use them quickly, I would say. Like maybe you're only using them for like a minute. But in this is like a completely just uniquely designed level just for that mechanic, which makes them cool. And it feels like it gave it enough time to show it off, and rather than it just being like a vignette in the main levels. And I was always very disappointed to get to the end of these levels, because what you do is you get to the end of the levels and you get awarded a star, which you can then use to upgrade your copy abilities in the town. But yeah, that wasn't the case with the actual copy ability challenge levels. Those felt a little bit tedious, to be honest, and I just did them because I needed the stars so I could upgrade Kirby's copy abilities. But yeah, if you played a Kirby game before, you'll know what the copy abilities are. You swallow enemies by holding down A, sucking them into Kirby's big mouth, and then it transforms him into a version of that enemy, and he can use that enemy's attack. These include things like a sword, throwing a bomb, and shooting fireballs. And even though I've never played a Kirby game before, I kind of could have guessed that these three would have been Kirby attacks. They're kind of like par for the course. However, there are some unique attacks on this offering, which kind of switches up combat. again, I've never played a Kirby game, so these might have been in a Kirby game before, but they were less obvious choices for me whilst playing, where I was like, that's a cool attack. I would never have thought to use that as an attack before, but maybe they have been in Kirby games before. So yeah, one I really liked was the ice attack, which lets Kirby ice skate around the map, making him a lot quicker as he moves. He uses then like a Superman-like frost breath to freeze enemies. There's also a drill attack from what you get from a mole, where it lets you basically act like a dolphin, where you drill under the ground and then can move under the ground, and then you can jump up to do an attack and then drill back under. My camera's out of focus for some reason. There we go. And then drill back under, and you can use this also in puzzles where there might be a fence that you can only get under by using a drill attack, which is cool. And there's quite a large variety of them. In the end, I ended up using the same one or two for most of the game because I felt they were the most effective. My favorite was the Dragon Breath one, but it's also cool because each of them has multiple levels that you can upgrade them. And I think for some of them, the fourth upgrade is like linked behind a different challenge in the game. So for example, the sword one, to get to the highest sword level, you have to, in the town there is a Colosseum run by what's he called, Meta Knight, and if you beat him and get to the end of the Colosseum, you then unlock the fourth level. And there's another one where there is a character with a big hammer. I mean, you can guess who it is, but I'm not going to spoil it, but there's a character with a hammer, and once you get past that story plot point, you then can unlock the final hammer in the game too, which is pretty cool. So I like that. And that kind of brings us on nicely to the bosses, because the game is filled with amazing boss designs, but I think the bosses themselves are actually a little bit too easy. And again, you know, I'm holding my hands up. I know this is a kid's game. I always hate it when people sort of criticize Pokemon for being too easy, and I'm like, yeah, it's a game for kids. Of course it's easy. But yeah, in this one, again, I'm just comparing it to Donkey Kong. I thought they were a little bit too easy, and interestingly, I thought actually the hardest boss of the game, apart from the final boss, is actually the first boss, Gorimondo, who is like this giant gorilla, and he has this huge like Mr. T like mohawk, very cool design. And to be honest, I didn't actually mind the easiness of the bosses, because like I said, I understand this game is aimed at children and doesn't have much challenge. But what I thought was really weird was how much of a difficulty spike there is for the final boss. So the final boss of the game, compared to these ones, is very hard, and like annoyingly so. Like it felt like such an abrasive experience going through the entire game with not much challenge to the bosses, and then having the one be super hard. And it also has like multiple phases in it. One tip that kind of helped me best, and one thing that you might not have realized, or you might think I'm stupid for not realizing, is in the town there is an item shop where you can buy buffs to your health, defense, and attack. And I thought you could only use one buff at a time, but it turns out you can stack the buffs, so you can use the attack, the defense, and the health buff all at the same time. That helped me get through the fight, because yeah, I ended up finding it quite difficult. And even though it's hard, I appreciated how epic it felt, because it was such an epic fight, like I said, with lots of I think there's like 3 phases to it, and it really feels more like a Final Fantasy final fight than it would a Nintendo game final fight. So at least it was a cool fight, even though it was difficult. Like I'm not gonna say it was as hard as like a FromSoft game, but it did feel very FromSofty with the different levels and the different attacks that are then introduced. So yeah, it was good. Like I beat it, I enjoyed it, but it did feel very strange that the game is so easy, and then right at the end they give you like a very, very hard boss. And again, if the game is truly aimed at kids, I can't see a lot of kids, or like, I can't see a lot of kids really enjoying that final boss, because it just felt so hard compared to the original game. And that's kind of everything, my thoughts on the original game. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about the new content, the Starcross World content. So this is an expansion to the game, and it offers 12 remix levels that have this new Starflower mechanic, which changes up the pre-existing levels enough to make them feel interesting and new. So what it does is it remixes existing levels. So you go into the level and you can see, I've been here before, but there are these flowers that if you hit them, it creates this like blue pathway that leads you off onto different aspects or different places within the level, which is quite nice. Also, it looks amazing. It's especially with this blue road, it's very, very pretty. And even though it's a new expansion, again, my own fault. I thought that they were going to introduce some kind of new aspect to the game. So sort of thinking a bit like, what is it, Mario 3D World and Bowser's Fury, where that Bowser's Fury was a bit more open worldy. I thought that's what this was going to be, where they were like, oh yeah, we've kind of taken what we learned and now created a new chunk of the world for you to explore that is different from what you explored in the base game. That isn't the case. The gameplay is exactly the same as in the base game. Instead of collecting Waddle Dees, you're basically collecting these things called Starries, and you need enough of them to... There is this crystal-shaped heart that explodes, and if you don't get the crystal back on the heart quick enough, it will destroy the world. Again, very Nintendo. And you need enough Starries to basically re-encase this heart in crystal. And it's the exact same layout as the original game. You have 5 challenges where you have to collect Starries. One of them is always get to the end of the level. The second one is always find the Starries within the level. And the third, fourth, and fifth are some hidden challenge. What is cool though is that there are some new mouthful items to swallow, which add some different elements to the platforming. There is one of them I really liked is a spring, which lets you do like massive jumps, which was cool. But yeah, I did feel like it was a bit of a shame because I thought like I said, the expansion might sort of be like a 1.5 version of the game where they were like, in the last 3 years we've come up with these new mechanics that we like and we're going to put it into this game, but it really wasn't. It was just like, here is like DLC. Here's some new worlds, a bit of a story, off you go kind of thing. It's very much just like an addition to the base game. And I think if you had played the original game back in 2022 and then came back now, you'd be like, this feels nice. Like it's what I remember. It gets me back into the game. The game looks pretty, runs really well, and whatever. But after playing the base game and then playing this, I was like, I wish this was something else. I wish it was a bit different. But yeah, also just like the base game, it's very funny that the expansion has a very, very hard... So the base game boss was hard. This is a very, very hard end game boss. And I think it has like even one more phase than the original, the original boss from the base game. Apparently this is normal in a Kirby game, that optional bosses tend to be more challenging. Nonetheless, I was annoyed in the base game. This annoyed me even more. And to the point where I was just like, you know what, I'm going to just knock the difficulty down. The game has 2 difficulty settings. Wild, which is harder. I don't know how it can be much harder than the original one. And then the more casual one, which is meant to be like where you do no damage. Even on casual, it was hard. I basically, I'm trying to remember. But yeah, in the game, when you upgrade your health, you get like 2 health bars, and it still managed to like knock off my first health bar and half of the second one. Even on the casual mode, it was still quite a difficult boss, but nonetheless very, very epic again, like the original one, which is cool. And the expansions in the Switch to upgrade, I think is probably worth the money just to see the game run in a higher resolution and frame rate because it's so gorgeous. I think though that's coming from me buying the game. I think I picked up the original game for like €30, so then 20 on top. So my experience cost me like €50. I saw the game today in a shop at 80. I'm like, €80 for this maybe isn't worth it. Maybe it's worth waiting to see if it goes on sale, or try and do what I did, where you can buy the original game secondhand somewhere and then just pay €20 for the expansion. But yeah, it's definitely like if you played the base game and are looking for more of that, then that's exactly what the expansion is, and it obviously makes the game look better and run better. But the question is actually, does this game need to look and sound this good? Because it really blew my mind that this game looks so amazing and sounded so amazing. Like, the graphics are absolutely beautiful, the lighting is gorgeous, the environments are lush and beautifully rendered, and the baddies are just very cool designs, and you almost feel bad for swallowing them as Kirby because they look so good. And the same can be said for the music. Like, Nintendo and HAL really rolled out their like A-team for this soundtrack. Each song is an instrumental. It sounds like it's been recorded by an orchestra. Like, sometimes I feel like Nintendo has like tiers of games for how good their sound is. and you get like Tears of the Kingdom, Odyssey, what else? Like the A tier games, like they get the kind of orchestral background music and soundtrack, and then the B tiers get like good sounding music, but it's definitely not like a 30-piece orchestra that's recorded it. It's just someone has made it. I think a good example for that is if you play Paper Mario and the Thousand Year Door. That feels like a very B team version of a soundtrack, like where you're like it's good, but I like the original soundtrack more. And another one recently that I played that was like that, I can't remember what game it was. Oh, actually, Donkey Kong Bonanza. Like, that should have been an A tier one, but actually I thought the music was pretty B tier, to be fair. But no, this game definitely has an A. Like, the music is so epic, but it's just weird because it just feels very strange, like having these graphics and this music in a Kirby game, because everything in it feels very epic. But because it's a Kirby title, as a player, I never actually felt like I was doing anything epic in the game. So therefore, it left kind of like an uncanny feeling in me that the game looked and sounded like the most high budget AAA game you can get on, I will say, on the Nintendo Switch, not on a PlayStation or Xbox or PC, but on the Nintendo Switch. So you think, I'm gonna feel like I am doing something amazing in the game because it looks so good and sounds so good and the crescendos are happening, and I don't know, like there's a rain cloud coming in and you're thinking, oh god, what's going to happen? But at the end of the day, the platforming is so basic and so simple that even though this is all happening around you, you don't feel like you're actually creating any of that epicness. You're just like, the epicness is there and I'm in it, kind of thing. And it really makes me wonder, like, why they decided to go this hard on a Kirby game, that they were like really went out of their way to make it look this good. It's more like, this should, maybe there are different games that Nintendo has. Like one example I'm looking at after the Direct is Metroid Prime 4, where they showed off this new motorbike section and the world around it just looked completely dead and bare. And I'm like, if you're gonna go for put all of this effort into a game which needs to look good and have epic environments and epic soundtrack, maybe do it in games like that, or even the classic sort of argument is for Pokemon, like make Pokemon look this good, or even Mario Kart World. Like there are some bits in Mario Kart World which just do not look good and don't necessarily sound great, but for whatever reason, maybe it's because it's HAL Laboratories and not a Nintendo first party, like in-house developer, that the whole game here, it just looks and sounds amazing. So that leads us on to the final question, and that is, should you play Kirby and the Forgotten Land, the Nintendo Switch 2 edition? And I think this is quite a difficult one for me, because I think if you are a Kirby fan, then you should obviously play it, as it's considered one of the best Kirby games. For people new to the series like me, I don't think you need to go out of your way to play it. I had an enjoyable time with the game, and playing the Nintendo Switch 2 edition added to that enjoyment because of how good the game looked and ran on the Nintendo Switch 2 screen. Nevertheless, the platforming was just okay, and the collectathon aspect of the game felt a little out of date, coming off of the back of just beating Donkey Kong Bonanza. The game looks and sounds incredible, but I often ask myself throughout the game if I actually needed it to look and sound incredible, because the gameplay often didn't match the epicness of what was being shown to me on screen. This can also be summarized by the game's bosses that look very, very cool, but are far too easy. On the other hand, if you are looking for a game where you can switch off your brain and just play, this game may be for you because it's also relatively short to beat, with a playtime of about 12 hours. Nevertheless, out of all of the iconic Nintendo series I have tried for the first time on the Nintendo Switch and now on the Nintendo Switch 2, Kirby is probably my least favourite and the one I am least likely to play again. So yeah, guys, that has been my review of Kirby, the Forgotten Land, Nintendo Switch 2 edition, the Starcross World. Like I said, I kind of, looking back now, like I've had a bit of time between now and when I actually finished it, and I think, yeah, like I'm thinking, if I think of that price point of €50, I think the game is pretty good. I think if you are going into it buying it new, then you will be disappointed if you pay €80 for it. I just don't think it's that good. Like it just doesn't feel that compelling to me of a game. And again, I think this is mostly because of Donkey Kong Bonanza, where if you are looking at these two titles and you only have €80 and can only buy one of them, definitely buy Donkey Kong Bonanza. It is by far the superior game in almost everywhere, apart from the sound. And yeah, this one, if you are very interested in playing it, or you feel like, okay, there is not much. Well, actually, it's definitely ramping up towards the end of the year. I'm recording this at the end of September. So next up is Pokemon, and then there's Metroid, and then there's Hyrule Warriors, or maybe they're switched around. So it's definitely ramping up towards the end of the year. But if you're kind of like, I don't really know what to play, and I want to play something on my Switch too, which one should I get? I would definitely suggest getting Donkey Kong Bonanza. That's one of the best games of the year. Definitely play that instead. So yeah, that has been episode 75 of the podcast. Are you planning on picking up the Nintendo Switch 2 version of the game? And actually, what do you think of these Nintendo Switch 2 expansion packs? Like I said, in the Direct that recently got released, there was a few games that are all getting these expansion packs where they're basically trying to get you to pay another €20 to go back into the game to have it have nicer graphics and a bit more content to play. Do you think they're worth the money? I definitely, there's one thing, maybe I'll just say it now because I don't really want to make a separate episode on it, but I bought the expansion pack for Donkey Kong Bonanza. That was €20. That is honestly the biggest piss take I've ever seen. Like, that should have been a free expansion. Like, you basically go to DK Island and there is nothing to do there. There's not even Bonandium gems to find. It's just a place to mess around. And then they added this roguelike element to it, which is fine. It gives you something to do, but I think it could have been done deeper. Like, there should be leaderboards there, like basically showing how fast people collected all of these emerald gems. So yeah, I think when you look at that as like, that's more straight DLC, that is really bad. That shouldn't have been €20. If Nintendo had like a refund policy, I would definitely have claimed it back, because that is just honestly like a scam. And I love Donkey Kong Bonanza, but I can't believe how bare bones that DLC was. It should have been a free thing, to be like, oh, thank you so much. You know, we have this many players. We have done great for maybe a bit later in the year where they get nominated for the Game Award, and like, oh, as a thank you, here is this free thing. We're going to DK Island. It shouldn't have been paid. I think it's disgusting what they did there. Yeah, so yeah. But do you think the other expansion packs are worth their money? Let me know. If you're a Spotify listener, a Patreon listener, or a YouTube viewer, you can know by commenting on the episodes. You know where the comments are. Leave a comment there. If you're listening elsewhere, you can let me know on Blue Sky. You can also just search Beat Your Backlog there, or you can come and join our Discord. That's the best way to reach me, is on Discord. The link to which is in the description. Also, if you're interested, check out my full written review of the game over on Patreon. The link will be in the description of the podcast. And speaking of Patreon, if you enjoyed the episode and would like to show your support, consider joining my Patreon at the $2 or $5 tier. If you do, you will get access to all of my content 24 hours before everyone else, and get access to the Patreon exclusive podcast, Beat Your Bonus. And if you keep listening after this episode ends, there will be a snippet from one of those exclusive episodes to try and tempt you into becoming a patron. So stick around for that after the end. And if you're in the mood after that to listen to more of my content about Nintendo first party games, like I said, do go and check out episode 74 of my Donkey Kong Bonanza review, or go and check out episode 71 of my Mario Kart World review. And finally, we definitely need your support. If you can't support monetarily, but you do enjoy the episodes, please do leave a review wherever you're listening. 5 stars would be amazing, because the reviews help new people find the podcast. So thanks so much for listening, guys. I hope you have a great day, and we'll see you in the next episode. Bye bye.